Greetings, everyone. I'm Sterling. This is Learning American English with me, Sterling. So maybe you've been confused about how to use the verbs to say and to tell. I think maybe you have. Today is your lucky day because that's what we're talking about right now. Not understanding the difference between saying and telling is a very common problem for Spanish speakers learning English. And I hear the verb to say being used wrongly all the time. So let's take a look at that. Today, you're going to hear what the difference is. And in the description, I am also going to put some exercises, which you should do after listening to this video a few times, to make this a permanent thing in your English speaking memory. So the difference between say and tell is simple. So first listen to a short explanation, and then, like always, there will be a story to provide examples in context. And hearing words in context always helps you to remember permanently. When do you say, and when do you say, tell? And how do you use each one correctly? And even if you listen no further than this point in the video, please remember one important point. You cannot say someone something. Quite often I hear someone say, and then he say me this. No, you have to say it to them. And think about what tense you're speaking in. Are you speaking in present or past tense? The correct form of this thought would be, and then he said this to me, or and then he told me. You say something to someone, or you can tell them with or without the word to, but you must say it to them. You can even tell it to them, but you cannot say someone anything. The verb say always requires the word to before the indirect object, if there is an indirect object. So first, let's talk about say. Saying is mostly associated with just speaking, with just talking. The kind of talking that's saying and not telling sometimes doesn't provide much significant information. Saying is more words than it is information. And if this saying is directed at anyone, you have to use the preposition to in front of the indirect object person that it's aimed at. For example, I said to him that he had to get out of the house. I directed those words, get out of the house, at him. Who's speaking? I am speaking. What am I speaking? I'm speaking the words, get out of the house. That's the direct object. The words, get out of the house. Who are those words directed at? At him. He is the indirect object. So remember, with the verb say, the person that the words are directed at has to be preceded by the word to. And saying, usually, is just the repetition of words, not necessarily transmitting any information. It's more just the repeating of words, almost like a quotation, but not really a quotation. Okay, now let's talk about to tell. Telling is the giving of information. And telling does not necessarily imply anything about the words being used, just information. And the verb tell already includes the need for an indirect object. That means I don't have to tell something to someone because telling is, by definition, always directed at someone. You cannot tell anything without the words being already directed at someone. On the other hand, you can say something without directing your words at anyone. And because this is automatic, it's a truth. An indirect object is a required part of the use of the verb to tell. So the verb tell doesn't require a directional preposition to in front of the indirect object. But the verb tell always has an indirect object, always. Sometimes we can add to add emphasis on the indirect object when we're using the verb to tell. For example, I can use to tell, I can use without to. Please tell me what time you're going to leave. I'm telling you the truth. I told her to quit the job. Now, how about some examples of using to tell with the preposition to for emphasis on the direct object? For example, exactly to whom did you tell this information? I told it to my brother and to nobody else. But notice, I could also leave out, I could omit the word to, and it would sound like this with the same thought. Exactly whom did you tell? I told my brother and nobody else. So if you're still a bit confused after that explanation, I'm not surprised. What you need to understand when and how to use the right verb is to hear some application in context. So this little story is going to help you practice that. And so keeping these things in mind, listen. Here we go. Okay. Getting along with your partner in life can be a challenge. My wife is all the time telling me to put my things away, and yet she's the one who never does anything. There are always little things that get on my nerves. Like, for example, the dishes. I say to her sometimes in the evening when I'm still working, I say, could you possibly wash the dishes? And she says, sure, I can do that. I tell her that I like them done at night because the dirty dishes attract ants. And she says, sure, don't worry, I'll do them. But what happens when I get up in the morning? I see she didn't do what she told me that she was going to do. And I say to her, why didn't you wash the dishes? And she says, what's the big deal anyway? And I tell her, well, the big deal is that there is an army of ants walking across the countertop. But just to avoid more conflict, I usually don't say anything more. I just wash the dishes myself, and the little ants go away. But this situation works both ways too, like getting some things fixed on the car. We've had this leak in the door seal of our Honda for almost 2 years. So every time it rains hard, the water drips through the seal and makes the passenger seat and the carpet wet. So she says, when she starts to get wet, she says, "Didn't I tell you to get that fixed?" And I say to her, "What's the big deal? It's just a little water." And then she says to me, "If you don't do anything at all, it's going to cause the floor to rust out." I suppose that's right. So just to make her happy, mostly just to keep her quiet, I have been telling her for a long time that I'll take care of the problem. But I don't really mean it. I'm just saying that to keep her quiet. I tell her I'm going to fix it when I'm really just saying that I will. Or another example is the laundry. I don't like to be demanding. I don't like to tell her what to do. So I try to stay quiet and not complain. But like with the dishes, I do complain. She always says she's going to keep up with the laundry. And then I run out of socks or out of underwear. And I say to her, "Haven't you been doing the laundry every day?" And then she gets irritated at me. "Are you telling me you don't have any socks again?" And I say, "Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. I'm telling you that all of my socks are in the dirty clothes container." And she says, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" And I say, "I am telling you now." And she says, "Well, it's a little late now, isn't it?" And I say, "Well, of course it is, but I don't count my socks every morning, and I don't give you a report on the numbers." And she says something like, "Well, that last time this happened, I told you to go buy more socks and underwear, and you didn't, did you?" And I say, "No, because I told you I don't have time to waste going to buy socks." And it goes on and on like that. She tells me what I should have done, and I tell her why I didn't do it. And then we say more meaningless things to each other. And it doesn't solve any problems. So what can I say? Okay, end of that segment. Did you catch the differences? I told you the words that I say to her. I told you, I gave you information. Whenever I used say, I usually was talking about the words that she or I used to express a thought. And whenever I used tell, I was giving her, or she was giving me, some information or a suggestion or a desire. And it was not just referring to the words we said. And notice that whenever there was an indirect object, whenever there was a person receiving what was being said, I used the preposition to in front of the indirect object with the verb to say. And with the verb to say, if there was no indirect object, which can only happen with the verb to say, then I could not use to because there was no indirect object to use it with. But always, when there was an indirect object, with say, I always added the preposition to. So with that information, this will help you if you go back and listen to the video again and listen for all of those ideas and think about them. And that is going to help you more automatically be able to choose between the verbs to say and to tell in your future conversations. There will be exercises in the description box below. And with that, thank you for following me and listening. I'll see you all in the next video really, really soon. Thank you. Bye and have a great day.